Love it when I have the fuzzy dice hanging from the mirror so you can do your numerology and your stock picks and all that other stuff. All right. Boom. So we're going to talk about how luxuries destroys the economy. So many people have this idea that it's the government or, I don't know, maybe war efforts or social, pressures or something like that that's destroying the economy. No, it's like all that stuff contributes. That's all part of it. But it's the move into luxuries. That's what destroys the economy. Now, if Cantillon can describe it from hundreds of years ago, then we know that the economic forces that he was describing are underlying. So whatever is occurring right now, these economic forces are still at play. Whether we can recognize them to the same level that Cantillon was, considering that back in his day he didn't have cell phones and airplanes and communications and transportation like we have now. The underlying forces that he was talking about, I think, are very much still at play. Now, I'm going to read from the essay here. I'm not going to read a bunch of it, just from but I think this is chapter 8, if I remember right. Let me look here. Yeah, chapter 8, further reflections on the increase and decrease of money in the state. And I've read from this before, so if you've been following my channel for any length of time, you've heard this, this part of the speech or as part of the essay. But I think it's really important. So I'm going to go ahead and start reading from this here. Where was the part? Okay. In Rome, the consumption of all goods and merchandise drawn from their vast provinces did not diminish the circulation of money any more than the pictures, statues, and jewels themselves. Now, what they were talking about is the massive amount of buying and purchasing and consumption that was taking place in Rome. But at the time, all the consumption and all the products and all the money was coming from Rome. If not, it was money coming into Rome, right? So they didn't have any kind of issues with the money leaving at this point. It was new money coming in. Although the wealthy landlords spent excessive amounts on their feast and paid 15,000 ounces of silver for a single fish, all that did not diminish the quantity of money circulating in Rome. Given that the provinces made tributes regularly, not to mention the money brought in by lenders and governors with their extortions, the amounts annually extracted from the mines increased the circulation in Rome during Augustus' whole reign. However, this is where it gets important. Luxuries was already on a very great scale. Now, this is where it starts getting important because everybody is going to do the same thing when they get new money in. It's human nature. I don't care if you get a new job, if you win the lottery, if you move to a different location where things are cheaper, whatever it is, if you have an increase of money into your life, you are going to raise your standard of living. You're going to buy a nicer car, you're going to wear nicer clothes, you're going to eat better food, you're going to travel more, you're going to start spending that money on enjoyment, right? Because why would you earn the money if you weren't going to enjoy it? Okay. However, luxury was already on a very great scale, and there was much eagerness not only for the curiosities produced in the empire, but also for jewels from India, pepper and spices, and all the rarities of Arabia. Silks which were not made in the empire began to be in demand there, right? So this is when the Romans were really wanting all that silk clothing and stuff. In fact, I heard a story about how the silk was so popular that they tried to make it non-masculine to wear silk, it's a feminine trait or something, so that there would be less silk being purchased by the men there because of the high demand for it and the money leaving Rome at the time. I can't remember where I read that story, but I thought it was pretty interesting. Anyway, moving on. Silks which were not made in the empire began to be in demand there. Nevertheless, the money drawn from the mines still exceeded the sums sent out of the empire to buy all these things. However, under Tiberius, money became scarce when that emperor collected 2.7 billion sesterces, I don't know if I'm saying that right, in his treasury. To restore an abundance of circulation, he only needed to borrow 300 million on mortgages of his estate. After his death, Caligula spent all of Tiberius's treasury in less than 1 year. And it was then that the abundance of money in circulation was at its highest in Rome, and the wind of luxury kept on blowing. Now, this is interesting. You think about it, like he spent all the money that was saved trying to maintain that way of life, that higher standard of living, right? The luxuries kept coming in. People were like, man, I want these better things. I want that silk from that other foreign nation over there, right? And so it took 1 year, and it was then that the abundance of money in circulation was at its highest in Rome, and the wind of luxury kept on blowing. The historian Pliny estimated that in his time, the emperor exported 100 million sesterces. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Annually, it was whatever form of money they were having at the time. I should have looked that up and pronounced it right. Anyway, but he would export at least 100 million of this annually. This was more than was drawn from the mines. So you think about it. Now the new money coming from the mines, more is leaving the nation due to the high luxuries that they were living. Under Trajan, land prices fell by 1/3 or more. Think about it, money leaving, less money available, right? Land prices fell by 1/3 or more. According to the younger Pliny, and money continued to decrease until the time of the emperor of Septimus Severus. Gosh, I wish I'd known these names better. All right. Money was then so scarce in Rome that the emperor collected enormous amounts of quantities of wheat, being unable to collect enough tax money for his enterprise. Thus, the Roman Empire declined through the loss of its money before losing any of its estates. That is what luxuries brought about, and what always will bring about in similar circumstances. So this is important to understand. Like, a lot of people want to find the excuses and put the blame and push it out there and say, is that fault and their fault and this people's way of thinking and that way of thinking or whatever. It doesn't. It has to do with human nature and what happens when new money comes in. I don't care if you're an individual and this is you're a personal, by yourself, no family, none of that stuff, and you get more money for your income, you get a raise, you're going to enjoy that new money. It takes a lot of discipline to say, I am not going to enjoy the new money. I'm going to take that extra money beyond what you already make, right? And I'm going to save that money. That is discipline that most humans do not possess. Some of them do, but most don't. Right? And so to believe that human nature is not going to move into luxuries is a very inaccurate way of thinking about things. I don't care what it is that you put out there for information or thinking about. If you do not incorporate the idea that once new money comes into the system that the people are going to move into luxuries, that move into luxuries starts bringing in foreign production and exports domestic manufacturing. If you don't incorporate that into your thoughts, you're going to miss it, because this is what was described hundreds of years ago. Right? See, we can put the blame anywhere we want. We can say it's this administration's fault, or it's, whatever, it's fiat currency, or, you can just blame it all on all kinds of things. And there's plenty of blame to go around. But it's the move into luxuries that really does it. The moment that you want a new car, the moment that you want better clothing, the moment that you want that fancy TV or whatever it is that's out there, it's that move into luxuries that starts destroying the economy. And it's best to understand that, because in order to fix the problem, right? The problem, like you're going to fix the problem, is you would literally have to do the opposite of what it is that created the problem. And creating the problem was the move into luxuries. That means you have to do the opposite of that. No new stuff. Fix and repair the old things. Don't buy anything for pleasure, right? Only necessities. Don't try not to buy anything of foreign production. Right? Only to buy domestic manufacturing. Save as much as you can. Like, don't spend it on anything other than investment into more production and more savings. And if we do that for years, we might be able to reverse the idea of the Cantillon effect. There is no example of that in history. Ain't gonna happen. All right? So it's best to understand it and accept it for what it is. And that if we do not have a fiat currency system operating the way it is, then we're going to have to figure out what it is that we are going to do to maintain our standard of living, considering the conditions in which that we have put ourselves in with the fiat currency and the exportation of that fiat currency to the rest of the world so that they will send us their stuff, right? How do you keep that going? You can't. So at some point, people will figure it out. The dollar will come to an end. They will not accept it anymore for their goods and services out there. But at this moment, they are. And I think it's probably a pretty good blessing that if we could recognize it, we could take advantage of the situation to best position ourselves from that. The idea that you can fix it doesn't add up. You can't fix it. Like, there's no plan, there's no person, there's no idea of fixing it. You would literally have to change the people's perception of what it is that they would do with an instinctual human nature and try and change that. Like, it doesn't work, right? All right, boy, I went off for a while there, 11 minutes into it. What time is it? Okay, I got about 20 minutes here, guys, and then I got to call it quits. I got a short lunch today. All right, Kevin, good afternoon from Lakeland, Florida. Great to see you, man. Okay, let's see if we can find some questions down here. I almost didn't recognize you today. I take my lunch break at the same time as UE to enjoy this awesome stream. Well, thank you, Andrew. I appreciate it. Ever look into XRP? Well, here's the thing. What's the difference that XRP is going to do that any other fiat currency can't do, or any other fixed currency couldn't do? So whether it's gold or Bitcoin or Federal Reserve notes, stable coins, XRP, it doesn't really matter, right? The currency itself doesn't really have any kind of real meaning to the economic forces that are at play. The economic forces are still going to continue. Now, whether or not you come to a point where there's no more new money, like on a gold standard, like if you can't mine it and you can't sell any of your stuff, you're out of currency, right? You're done, man. There is no more money. However, in a fiat currency system, you got all this debt issuance that can take place. So then it can keep the transactions moving. The underlying forces are still at play, right? We have to understand that. So if you incorporate or change the way that we are handling a currency, what is it that that currency is going to do that the Federal Reserve note isn't already doing? Now, I know you have like this idea that the Federal Reserve and the government has all this control and the sanctions and all that other stuff that goes with it. However, it doesn't change how the economic forces are going to be at play when it comes to either a fixed currency or a fiat currency. So let's assume that, let's just take XRP out of it for just a second and just imagine two different types of currency. A fixed currency, something similar to Bitcoin or gold or something of that nature, and a fiat currency, one that can be adjusted as far as the amount of quantity that's in circulation and the debt-based backing to it. Okay, so we got these two different types of circulation, or two types of currency in circulation that could be used. If you have a fixed currency, something similar to the gold or Bitcoin, what you are going to end up with is an industrious nation who is going to hoard all that money. When they hoard that money, they are going to deprive the rest of the world of being able to do transactions, and you are going to have global depressions taking place because of that. The whole idea of the fiat currency and the demand for it was the ability to do transactions. Okay, so now we have a digital currency that you can apply to the idea of being able to do transactions, but it may have a fixed or limited amount to it. You're still going to have the same situation with the most industrious nation taking all the currency for themselves, depriving the rest of the world. Right? And now this is going to be the problem no matter what you face when you have that fixed income, or fixed currency, like a gold or Bitcoin or anything else. If you have a fiat currency like the Federal Reserve note, now you have something different that you have to then imagine what would replace it, right? Now, what is it that the dollar is doing that the other nations aren't doing? For one, it's providing the world with a safe and liquid asset like the US Treasuries. Right? Now, this is something that no other nation has available for the rest of the world, because no other nation is willing to go into deeper debt as the United States has to provide the world with the safe and liquid asset like the US Treasury. And like, really honestly, are you going to trust Chinese bonds? Are you going to trust something else? Like, no, you're going to trust the US Treasury because it's the deepest liquid, most liquid market in the world, right? So now, if you have a nation that is, or another nation that was willing to compete with the idea of being able to go into debt as much as the United States is, then you have to actually compete with the United States to do that, meaning that you have to buy all the world's production. Right? That's what the United States does. They sell their debt, get the money, buy the world's production with it, and we import a bunch of stuff because of that. So we run trade deficits to get the dollar out there to the rest of the world. No other nation is willing to do this. So now you can introduce a new currency into the system. Go ahead. Like, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, as long as it can do a transaction, that's the only, like, if I could trade my time for that product over there, that's the only point of the currency for my purpose, right? I don't need it to do anything else. I just need it to do that. Now, a lot of people want it to hold value, or they want it to have all these special things that happen from it. Okay, cool. I can understand why people would want that, or why that would be part of their opinion, but that doesn't necessarily make it the case, right? So if you need something that's going to secure that value, you need to figure out what it is that you can put your money towards that's going to secure it. Something like gold or silver, or guns or ammo or food or something, like, you know, something that you find value in. Other than that, the currency is meant to do the transaction. It's meant to just facilitate the trade. And so understanding just the facilitation of the trade, then the currency shouldn't be that important. It really shouldn't. It should just be another item out there that's serving a purpose, right? Now, whether it's Bitcoin or dollars or anything else, it shouldn't be that important. And to me, I don't look at it as being that important. I have, you know, I can do a transaction in Bitcoin. I can do it in silver. I can do, you know, I mean, I can go and trade my time. I know how to do this kind of thing. I don't need the rest of the world to step in line with what it is that I need to do, right? But to think that we could put a currency in there that's going to change anything or make it better, no, it doesn't. It doesn't matter how you do it, right? It doesn't matter if it's a digital currency, a fiat currency, a gold currency. It doesn't make any difference. The economic forces are still going to be at play, and we have to understand what the results of that was going to be. It's not going to fix it. That's the thing. It won't fix anything, right? You know, whatever fixing is supposed to be. I don't even know what fixing is supposed to be like. What would the environment look like if it was fixed, you know? I mean, I don't understand that at all. Moving on. Aren't you worried about your car battery just having the door open like that for a long period of time? I'm not. All right. Lunch over, Simon. Yeah, it is, but I had a late lunch today, so I'm actually going till 12:30 today. So we still have another 10-15 minutes or so. All right, when they go to central bank digital currencies, won't they just make all other crypto illegal? Okay, illegal in what sense? Like, can you really stop somebody from doing a Bitcoin transaction? I mean, if they got a wallet and they've got an address, who's going to stop that from happening? Like, I understand that you can make laws that say, don't do it or else, right? Now, if you do a law that says don't do it or else, and that law is going against something that somebody wants, I guarantee you whatever that law is trying to restrict, it'll cause it to go up in value. Think about sex, drugs, firearms, anything that people want and you make illegal, or you make it, you know, put a lot of risk towards it, you're going to send the prices moving upward, right? So that's what I feel is going to take place with anything out there that somebody wants, and you should make it illegal. Cryptos would be the same thing, right? You start putting risk on it, and you're going to start putting on the rewards. I mean, marijuana is essentially worthless here in Oregon now, right? There's so much production of marijuana here in Oregon, there's like almost no value to it. But you take it to some place where you'll go to prison for the rest of your life, and it's got a lot of value. All of a sudden, it's got some value to it. It's worth something, right? Because of the risk. Other than that, no value. Weed doesn't have value, but you make it illegal, now you got value. You make, you know, put the risk on there. Right? Now all of a sudden it's worth money. Now you can have black market trades, and you can have an whole underground economy taking place if you just make that one little plant illegal. All of a sudden you can have a whole underground economy flourishing because of the risk that is associated with it. The moment that you take the risk and you remove that economy collapses. Boom, done, worthless. Worthless product, doesn't have any point, doesn't have any value to it. I don't know why anybody would even attempt to invest into it. You know? All right. How does AI and the mass automation fit into the future economic model? I'm not scared of it. Like a lot of people look at it and saying, "Oh man, we're all going to lose our jobs and we're not going to have any." I don't see that. Like I don't see it that way. If you take technology and you make it so that I don't have to do the mundane things that I do for employment, what you are doing is freeing me up to do what it is that I really should have been doing with my life in the first place. Right? And that's the way I think most people should probably be looking at it. Is that this like automation, anything that's bringing convenience to our lives is a good thing. Now I understand there is the scary part of it, and you can have like the Terminator kind of aspect of like, robots coming to destroy our world. Okay, that's a lot of fun to think about. A lot of times, if you want to put on the tinfoil hat and do conspiracy theories, that's a lot of fun stuff to think about at times. But to be perfectly fair with the idea, I'm looking forward to having the time where I can get into a vehicle and it'll just take me wherever I want to go and I don't have to think about it. Like to me, I like that idea. Now, don't get me wrong, I like driving a car too, so there'll be times that I would want to actually drive a vehicle, but there's other times the convenience of having a vehicle to just drive me wherever I want to go so I can spend that time doing what it is that I would rather be doing, like thinking about something. Well, then cool, right? I don't have a problem with any of that. So again, like technology advancements in production, anything that takes time away from us doing stupid, boring, mundane things so that we can pursue the true passions and things that we actually could bring like enjoyment and talent and entertainment and value that is beyond that of just doing some boring task that a robot could do. I think that's a good thing. Like I like that idea. Simon, you're a very intelligent dude, that there are a lot of things that are right in front of your face that you just, for whatever reason, refuse to see. It's not that I refuse to see them, it's just that I choose to not make that important in my life. There's a difference inside of that, right? People are like, dude, you're not incorporating this. And it was just like, well, you don't think that I don't know about it? Right? It was just like, I do know. I just chosen to take that information and not make it important in my life because I don't find it to be important in my life. See, all this information that you take in and you make it important, like if you take in all these talking of all this, like, political jargon and stuff that's going on there, then you're going to sit there and process through that stuff all day long. It doesn't do any benefit to you, right? Like, I cannot find a single anything out there talking about interest rate movements, whether it's coming from a politician, another economist, anything out there, when they're talking about what the Federal Reserve is going to be doing with their interest rates and their monetary policy, I have very little faith in any of their comments. Zero. Like, I take into consideration none of that stuff. Their opinion, I might look at it to see what it is that other people are thinking out there, but what my opinion about where the Federal Reserve is going on their interest rates and the Fed funds rates comes directly from the opinion that I have of the Federal Reserve documents and their words that they given, right? So I don't need to look at some other dude talking about the Federal Reserve and where it is that they feel that they're going to have 6 interest rate cuts this year, only to find out that they're only going to, this dude changes his mind to say, oh, they're only doing 2 because the inflation scenario has changed. I'm not into it. Like, I don't need any of that stuff. It's not important to me. Right? And so, yeah, there's a lot of political stuff that's going on out there that will definitely have an impact on your life, especially if you choose to make it have an impact on your life. By taking in that information, by putting that into your subconscious, by making decisions whether or not to buy the house, the car, the other stuff, by what this politician had said to you, right? See, this is what I find very interesting, is that politician might have said something and then you'll never hear from that dude again, right? But you'll put that impression into your mind. These people are not your friends, right? Nothing on the mainstream media and no article written, right? I don't care if it's from Bloomberg or the Wall Street Journal or anywhere else. None of that stuff should be taken with anything other than a grain of salt to go along with the information that you have been researching directly from the documents of the Federal Reserve itself. Right? Because everything else is propaganda. It's like, I can't I can't describe it any other way. Not a single article can I find has any kind of accuracy towards monetary policy. Not one. You know that? That's what blows me away. Not a single one. Not anything that, like even just recently, Kashkari is out there blasting his gums about, maybe having to raise interest rates by a point or something like that. And I laugh about that. It was like, man, that is exactly what I have been describing for so long now. That's the monetary policy. That dude out there on the mainstream media blasting out that attention that they may need to raise rates going into the future. That's the monetary policy within itself. Not the adjustment of interest rates, but the communication of the interest rates to the public. Okay? It's not real. That is propaganda, straight up. I don't need to absorb information that is not, I'm not saying it's not factual, but it's not right. Everything that I ever read as far as lumber, when it came to the lumber industry and the reasons why lumber prices were moving up and all that, they were all wrong. Every one of them was. Just like the monetary policy. Everybody's saying 2% inflation rate or something like that, 2% target. We all know. Anybody who follows my channel knows that the Federal Reserve isn't going for a 2% target. We all know that they're going for a 2% average inflation rate over time. And that Michelle Bowman just reiterated it in her speech just the other day. But yet every single economist and mainstream media article and everything that you read out there is talking about this 2% target. Doesn't exist. All right? Simply doesn't exist. So all the people who are incorporating this into their strategy and putting out these news articles and putting out their opinions about where it is that the Federal Reserve is going to go are delusional. Every one of them. I don't need to listen to that stuff, right? The only information that I am really taking in right now that is going to be guiding me in where it is that I feel that the interest rates are going to be going, which is going to be truly important to me, is coming from the Federal Reserve itself. Nowhere else. Because nobody else is in charge of monetary policy. Those guys are, right? Not the Treasury, not Biden, whatever he was supposed to do with monetary policy. Those guys are not involved in it. They're not, right? Federal Reserve has been talking about this monetary policy for literally decades. And if you're not following it, then what you are going to do is you are going to incorporate the ideas of these politicians or these other economists out there who are blasting off this stuff that is completely delusional, and you're going to incorporate that into your subconscious, and you're going to start making decisions based with that information involved. Okay? I don't need that. And that's the reason why I do it. That's the reason why I exclude politics out of it. It's because if I go back and I study this stuff, how many people have listened to me go over these speeches time and time again, talking about the lower bound, talking about the neutral interest rates, talking about average inflation rate over time. These are things that are never commented on within the mainstream media, within the corporate media, with all these famous economists out there. They don't bring these things up. But this is super important and critical to the Federal Reserve's monetary policy. Nobody cares. They're all worried about Biden spending money in Ukraine. I'm thinking that is such a small piece of this, such a bigger picture. Right? Something that goes back hundreds of years. Wondering why it is that the gold standard was removed from our system. They want to push blame out there on people not realizing Triffin's dilemma. People wonder, what the hell is Triffin's dilemma? What the hell is the lower bound? What the hell is neutral interest rates? Nobody incorporates this stuff into their strategies, but yet this is part of the monetary policy that is so critical to understanding. Nobody gets it. See, nobody gets it. That's why I find it so crazy that some dude sitting in this 99 Ford Explorer talking, economics on YouTube seems to have really nailed it, and in my opinion have nailed monetary policy, and nobody else sees it. I just don't get it. Like, I should not be the only one talking like this. I should not be the only one calling out the Federal Reserve saying you're not going for a 2% target, but going for a 2% average inflation rate over time, which means that appropriate monetary policy would seek to achieve inflation modestly above 2% for some time. What the hell does that mean, right? But that's the monetary policy that they're going for. Average inflation rate over time. No definition of what average inflation rate is, no mathematical formula for it, no length of time for it. No wonder why people don't want to incorporate that into their strategy. It's too confusing to understand, right? But that's what exists. That's the reality of the situation. And we can ignore it as much as we want. It doesn't change the fact that it's there. All right, moving on. What time is it? Oh gosh, guys, I got like 2 minutes left. Okay. Have you ever looked into the International Monetary Fund and the Bureau of International Settlements, UE? The Bureau of International Settlements, the banks used by the central banks for 95% of the world's GDP, and post long documents about projects they work on. Yeah, I mean, in fact, it's from the, okay, I was one of the very first people on the internet to call out the central bank digital currency, saying that the Federal Reserve was going to, and all central banks around the world, would eventually be moving into a digital currency. Now, at the time, I didn't know it was going to be called CBDC, right? I didn't know it was central bank digital currencies. I didn't know they were going to have this acronym for it. I didn't know anything about stable coins or none of that stuff. However, I did come across a Bureau of International Settlements blog, right, that was talking about where it is that interest rates were going to go in the future, and if you were going to have a negative interest rate, you would have to remove cash from the system. This is a problem. Everybody within the banking system knows that if you go negative interest rates, everybody's going to go run down to the bank and pull their money out in cash, because at least if you held cash, you are not having something that has a negative interest rate attached to it like you would as far as a deposit in the bank. The Bureau of International Settlements knows this. So this is when they said they need two currencies, cash and e-currency. An e-currency would be a separate currency away from cash. And that this e-currency could then go into circulation, and you could remove cash out of the system by making it annoying to use. Charging a deposit, or charging a fee to deposit and a fee to withdraw cash, you can then make it a nuisance down at the store to use cash, because now the store is going to charge you a fee for using it, which is then going to force you into the central bank digital currencies. Now, I was talking about this before anybody even heard of central bank digital currencies. In fact, I think I have a video on it. I think it was Cashless Society. I think it's something like, I put cashless into the description of it so you can go and research it yourself. But I was talking about that a long time ago from the research I was doing in the Bureau of International Settlements. Okay? I study this stuff a lot, guys. I have gone down so many rabbit holes. There was a time, here's the thing, guys. When you start studying a lot of the conspiracy theories, you start looking into the New World Order, and you start looking at some of these families who are truly running the system, who are really running this planet, you will find that there is some really dark, very depressive stuff out there. And the more you dive into it, the worse it gets. Now, I don't know if you really want to take in that kind of energy and feeling into your life, but I did. And I tell you, it didn't benefit me none. In fact, it deteriorated my life. It got me into a point where I didn't want to be part of the system. All right? I didn't want to contribute. I didn't want to pay taxes. I didn't want to do anything that involved any kind of aspect of dealing with that kind of horrid thing. You know, I did not live a life that was pleasant. All right? See, that's the problem with that. Yes, it exists. It's out there. What are you going to do about it, yeah? You want to destroy the system? If you really want to get those guys, you have to do what it is that I am doing. If you can understand the monetary policy so good that you can explain it to the Federal Reserve themselves, then we can take in the idea of what it is that we need to do to take that power away from them. But right now, every time we believe that there's an inflationary scenario that is going to come and destroy the economy, that is working towards the Fed's benefit, and most people have no idea how that works. On why it is that the inflation expectation being elevated is actually working for the benefit of the Federal Reserve and their monetary policy. Being mad at the Fed, thinking you should destroy them, thinking that they're going to destroy the currency, thinking that the money, that the dollar is going to lose value going into the future from all the crap that they are doing, works towards the Fed's benefit. Okay? And see, this is what's so hard. If you can't get that, and see, people will listen to that and they'll shake their head saying, dude, you are so wrong. I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong, and people who have been following my channel for any length of time know that I'm not wrong on that either. And that's what's scary about it. So what are you going to do? All right? And figure it out and then destroy the system from within, from your own decisions that you make. All right, guys, I really got to go. I got 2 minutes before I got to be back at work. All right, City Star Productions, thank you so much for the $9.99. If inflation is low, does that mean productivity will get low? So when you say inflation expectation, it means people will get used to the standard of living. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm still learning. Well, I think there's a lot to think about inside of that question, inside, just the idea of it. But inflation, it was the inflation expectation that was persistently too low that was creating the issue with the Federal Reserve. Now, you have to think, there's something called real interest rates. I'm going to do this real short because I got to be back at work. But there's something called real interest rates, right? So now, if you are an investor who intends on getting a 2% return on your investment, but you have an inflation expectation of 1%, the real interest rate that you are going to get after the inflation is 1%, right? This is the inflation expectation of 1%. The investor gets a 2%, but after inflation, the investor gets 1%. If you lower the inflation expectation, you will raise the real interest rate to 2%. Okay? Very important to understand that. Lowering the inflation expectation or raising the inflation expectation will adjust the real interest rates that are out there, the return in which that the investor is going to get, or the loans that they take out, or whatever. Okay? All right, guys, I wish I could hang out here for a little longer, but I got to go back into work. Thank you so much for being here. We have 452 people watching with 129 likes and a $9.99 super chat because you guys are always so generous for the channel. I really appreciate that. Thank you, guys. Uneducated Economist, you let me know.